Many women reach menopause believing they know their own bodies. For decades, they ate the same foods, maintained similar habits, and never imagined that, suddenly, what once seemed harmless would begin to cause more intense, hot flashes, sleepless nights, increased abdominal fat, constant fatigue, and a frustrating feeling that their metabolism has simply stopped working. The question almost inevitably arises, what really changed? What few people explain is that menopause doesn't just alter the menstrual cycle. It profoundly changes how the body responds to food, stress, sleep, and even how it stores energy. That's precisely why many women start to believe they're doing something wrong, when in reality, their bodies have simply begun to follow new biological rules. Throughout this documentary, we will reveal why some foods can intensify menopausal symptoms, what hormonal mechanisms are behind these changes, and what science really says about this subject. Before continuing, we have an invitation. If this type of content about women's health, healthy aging, and evidence-based information makes sense to you, subscribe to the channel. New videos are published regularly to help women better understand their bodies and make more informed decisions during menopause and postmenopause. There's a very common idea that simply aging leads to weight gain, loss of energy, and uncomfortable symptoms. However, institutions like the North American Menopause Society, the Mayo Clinic, the National Institutes of Health, and Harvard Medical School show that the story is much more complex. The gradual decline in ovarian hormones triggers a true metabolic reorganization. The body continues to function, but it begins to respond differently to the same stimuli as before. Estrogen, for example, plays a role far beyond reproductive health. For many years, it has been involved in regulating insulin sensitivity, helping to distribute body fat more evenly, contributing to the preservation of muscle mass, partially protecting the cardiovascular system, influencing inflammation control, contributing to sleep quality, and even interfering with communication between different brain regions responsible for appetite and satiety. When hormone levels begin to decline during perimenopause and remain low after menopause, virtually all of these systems need to adapt. This adaptation doesn't always happen efficiently. It is precisely at this point that many women begin to notice weight gain, mainly in the abdominal area, even without significant changes in their diet. But this accumulation of fat is not just an aesthetic issue. Visceral fat, located around the internal organs, is metabolically active. It produces inflammatory substances that can further increase insulin resistance, promote changes in cholesterol, and make weight control even more difficult. At the same time, another silent process is taking place. The reduction in estrogen accelerates the natural loss of muscle mass that already occurs with aging. Since muscles are one of the body's largest energy consumers, losing muscle mass means reducing basal metabolism. In other words, the body starts to burn fewer calories to perform the exact same activities. That's why diets that worked at age 35 often stop producing the same results at age 50. Not because there's a lack of willpower, but because physiology has changed. Another hormone that deserves attention is insulin. Under normal conditions, it helps transport glucose from the blood into the cells. However, during menopause, many women develop a gradual reduction in insulin sensitivity. This means that the body needs to produce larger amounts of this hormone to control blood sugar. The higher the amount of circulating insulin, the greater the tendency to store fat, especially in the abdominal region. Furthermore, frequent fluctuations in blood glucose levels promote episodes of intense hunger, cravings for sweets, fatigue, and difficulty concentrating. Many women believe that these symptoms are unrelated. Hot flashes, mood swings, difficulty losing weight, fatigue, anxiety, and sleepless nights seem like completely different problems. But, from a biological perspective, they can all be connected by the hormonal changes that characterize this phase of life. Sleep also undergoes a significant transformation. The reduction in estrogen and progesterone interferes with sleep architecture, increasing nighttime awakenings and reducing the time spent in deep sleep. Sleeping less causes cortisol, known as the stress hormone, to remain elevated for longer. When cortisol remains chronically high, it promotes greater storage of abdominal fat, increases glucose production by the liver, stimulates appetite for high-calorie foods, and can increase low-grade inflammatory processes. It's as if several pieces of the same puzzle are starting to fit together. Therefore, blaming just one food, or believing that there is a single culprit for menopausal symptoms, does not correspond to what scientific evidence shows. The problem is usually a combination of hormonal changes, loss of muscle mass, reduced insulin sensitivity, poorer sleep quality, increased stress, and dietary choices that were previously easily tolerated, but now produce different metabolic responses. It is precisely in this context that certain foods begin to have a much greater impact on the female body. Many women discover that improving their diet is only one part of caring for their bodies during menopause. Some also choose to include a nutritional supplement specifically developed for this phase, always as a complement to a balanced diet, physical exercise, adequate sleep, and medical follow-up. If you wish to learn about the option indicated in the description, it's worth checking the information after watching the video and discussing the matter with your healthcare professional. From this point on, an inevitable question arises. If the hormonal environment has completely changed, what foods could further intensify these changes without many women realizing it? The first answer is often surprising. It's not just about the sugar itself, but about how quickly it enters the bloodstream. The first category of foods consists of refined sugars and sweetened beverages. At first glance, they seem like just a quick source of energy. But during menopause, the body can react very differently. With the reduction of estrogen, insulin sensitivity tends to decrease, causing large amounts of glucose to remain, circulating in the blood for longer. In response, the pancreas releases more insulin to try to normalize these levels. This process, repeated daily, promotes fat storage, especially in the abdominal region, and creates a cycle of sharp peaks and drops in blood sugar. Many women begin to feel hungry shortly after meals, experience intense cravings for sweets in the afternoon, and report a significant drop in energy. It's not just the lack of discipline. In many cases, it's a reflection of a metabolism that now operates under a new hormonal reality. Research published by institutions such as the NIH and the Mayo Clinic shows that dietary patterns high in added sugars are also associated with increased low-grade inflammation, a silent process that can contribute to joint pain, persistent fatigue, and a higher cardiovascular risk. Furthermore, significant fluctuations in blood glucose levels can make hot flashes more uncomfortable for some women and contribute to mood swings throughout the day. The second food group includes ultra-processed carbohydrates, such as white bread, filled cookies, processed snacks, highly refined pasta, and various products made with highly processed white flour. The problem is not with any single food, but with how quickly these products are digested. When there is virtually not enough fiber to slow down absorption, glucose rapidly enters the bloodstream, again stimulating large insulin releases. This mechanism promotes a constant increase in hunger and reduces the feeling of satiety. Many women believe they have simply lost control of their appetite, when in fact, part of this feeling can be explained by the combination of hormonal changes and dietary choices that intensify these metabolic responses. It is precisely at this moment that another phenomenon goes unnoticed. The gradual loss of muscle mass reduces the body's ability to use glucose as fuel. The smaller the amount of muscle, the less efficient the utilization of this energy tends to be. This helps explain why strength training is considered one of the most important strategies during menopause, much more effective than extremely restrictive diets. The third group deserves attention because it is often consumed frequently without raising concerns. Processed meats such as bacon, sausage, salami, ham, and other cured meats. These products generally contain large amounts of sodium, saturated fats, and preservatives. With the drop in estrogen, the natural protection exerted on the cardiovascular system diminishes. Therefore, factors such as high blood pressure, changes in cholesterol, and inflammation become even more relevant. This doesn't mean that occasional consumption is prohibited, but maintaining these foods as a frequent part of the diet can increase risks that naturally already rise after menopause. Next on the list is a food that many women don't expect to find: alcohol. For many years, a glass of wine seemed to have no major consequences. However, after menopause, the body metabolizes alcohol differently. In addition to interfering with the quality of deep sleep, it can alter the regulation of body temperature, promoting nighttime awakenings and episodes of hot flashes. Another important aspect is that the liver participates in both alcohol metabolism and the processing of various hormones. When there is frequent consumption of alcoholic beverages, this balance can be affected, further hindering an already naturally delicate hormonal adaptation. Several studies also observe that women report poorer sleep quality after consuming small amounts of alcohol during this phase of life. Sleeping less means further increasing cortisol, reinforcing the cycle of fatigue, hunger, abdominal fat gain, and difficulty controlling weight. The fifth group includes many of the foods known as ultra-processed snacks. Industrially produced potato chips, savory biscuits, packaged sweets, and various ready-made products combine large amounts of refined carbohydrates, low-quality fats, and excess sodium. This combination was developed to continuously stimulate the brain's reward centers. In other words, the more you consume, the greater the desire to continue eating tends to be. During menopause, when hormonal changes already influence hunger and satiety signals, this effect can become even more evident. The sixth group involves foods that are extremely high in sodium. Sodium is an essential nutrient for the body to function properly. The problem arises when it is consumed in excess, mainly through processed foods. With lower estrogen levels, the risk of high blood pressure gradually increases. Excess sodium also promotes fluid retention, a feeling of bloating, and can contribute to greater cardiovascular strain in predisposed women. Furthermore, a diet excessively high in sodium, when maintained for many years, can negatively impact bone health, which already requires special attention after menopause due to reduced bone mineral density. The seventh, and perhaps most surprising, group consists of foods marketed as healthy, but which conceal large amounts of sugar. Sweetened yogurts, cereal bars, sugary granolas, fitness drinks, and breakfast cereals often convey an image of health. However, many of these products contain significant amounts of added sugars. This shows how marketing can be very different from the actual nutritional composition. Reading labels, looking at the ingredient list, and prioritizing minimally processed foods often yields much more consistent results than relying solely on packaging messages. Over the past few years, researchers have also begun investigating the role of the gut microbiota during menopause. Although many questions remain unanswered, evidence suggests that a diet rich in fiber, fruits, vegetables, legumes, and fermented foods can promote a more diverse microbiota, contributing to better metabolic control, reduced inflammation, and even a positive influence on mood and immune function. Another point often overlooked is that no dietary strategy can completely compensate for muscle loss. Strength training, performed regularly and with proper guidance, remains one of the most effective interventions for preserving metabolism, improving insulin sensitivity, strengthening bones, and reducing visceral fat. At the same time, prioritizing good quality protein in every meal helps preserve muscle, increases satiety, and provides the body with the necessary amino acids to cope with changes of this phase. The good news is that many women experience significant improvement in symptoms when they stop seeking extreme solutions and start investing in small, consistent changes. Sleeping better, managing stress, maintaining regular physical activity, consuming more natural foods, and seeking medical follow-up can produce far greater benefits than completely eliminating a single food. Therefore, the first link in the description indicates a supplement developed to support women during this phase of life, assisting with metabolism, weight control, and overall well-being during menopause and postmenopause. It should be understood as a complement to healthy habits and monitoring by a healthcare professional, never as a substitute for such care. At the end of this investigation, the answer to the initial question becomes clear. Science does not claim that there are 7 foods that are absolutely forbidden during menopause. What it does demonstrate is that foods rich in refined sugars, ultra-processed carbohydrates, processed meats, excessive alcoholic beverages, processed snacks, products high in sodium, and seemingly healthy foods but loaded with sugar can intensify symptoms because menopause profoundly alters the action of estrogen on metabolism, insulin sensitivity, inflammation, sleep, body fat distribution, and cardiovascular health. Understanding these mechanisms allows us to replace fear with knowledge. Menopause does not represent the end of well-being, but a new phase in which the body requires different strategies. A balanced diet, strength training, preservation of muscle mass, quality sleep, stress management, medical follow-up, and adequate nutritional support form a set of scientifically backed measures to promote better health and quality of life. If this documentary provided you with useful information, subscribe to the channel and follow our upcoming content. Understanding how the body changes during menopause is one of the most important steps to experiencing this phase with more confidence, autonomy, and well-being.